That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to the Modern Campus Project, the Higher Ed PM, a brand new 4-part pulse check series from Enrollify. I'm Jake Tolman, the CEO of Mainform Consulting, a seasoned project management consultant with over a decade of experience specializing in technology system integrations, digital transformation, and project leadership within the higher education sector. In this series, we'll do 3 things. Set the foundation of what modern project management looks like with AI, campus-ready language that gets presidents, provosts, and frontline staff moving in sync, and step-by-step plans to build your AI PM skills without the migraines. Now, let's get into today's episode. I have with me a wonderful guest, John Connolly. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Jake. Really appreciate being here. I have over a decade of project management experience. I've been teaching project management on a training basis for about 3.5 years now. I'm a PMP certified, PMO certified professional, and an authorized training partner instructor with a couple of other organizations. So really looking forward to diving deep onto some of the project management topics that we have planned out today.
When I looked at your history and your resume, your LinkedIn presence, boy, you know more than enough to be dangerous in the world of project management and leadership. Your understanding of concepts and principles are very grounding, both in terms of what's applicable right now, but also very fertile in terms of what we can grow and develop our organizations into. Now, I've worked in higher education for nearly 10 years, and let me tell you, higher education campuses, they often struggle with change. We rely a lot on tradition to help us build our credibility. But things are changing now. With the advent of AI, our student body is changing. Their expectations are changing. And so when you talk about a project management office, if any PMO that was built before 2020, basically the purpose is monitor and control, right? Standardize and make sure that we don't have too much variance. But today, if you're building one today, the whole purpose is going to be to learn and adapt. So the arrival of AI has really turned governance, your expertise, into a much more living, breathing, frontline approach. So tell me, when you think about the purpose of a modern PMO, what should it be doing for the organization today?
Yeah, I think more than anything else, you're talking about alignment. PMOs are a crucial component of governance for your project work. That is true. That's always going to remain true. I think what we think of when we say the word governance is going to need to shift as how it's applied in our line of work. When you're talking about that, right, that governance needs to move away from a command and control perspective and into a broader organizational alignment perspective. And so far as that goes, right, your PMO is kind of the hub of the wheel. And so you've got senior, like strategic level decision makers, tactical level decision makers. You have the project managers, boots on the ground, front lines. You have other outside stakeholders, clients, customers, vendors, suppliers. And these are all like part of the giant wheel that's invested. They're all stakeholders in your project work. And it's the PMO's job to make sure that everyone is acting like they're on the same team. And that's changed rapidly in the last 3 years. 5 years ago, you said 2020, right? That everything was oriented around the command and control model, right? Let's set a standard, let's set policies, let's enforce. And I've seen that shift tremendously, even at the Project Management Institute level, right? Where they have produced a practice guide, a PMO practice guide, that just less than a year ago, they've implemented a new PMO CP certification. The other thing is they just yesterday released the 8th edition of the Project Management Body of Knowledge.
That's right.
That's out. Very exciting. And they have changed around some of the terminology, rearranged some of the processes. And one of their focuses now in their performance domains is governance, right? And so they've rearranged their understanding. Governance now includes risk management and issue management and unifying plans and processes. So I think that that's also shifting a lot, even within the project management community.
That's fascinating. So it's like governance is shifting, like you said, from a command and control now to a decentralized function, almost, where it's now a tactical competitive advantage. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, it doesn't even necessarily need to be decentralized in a structural way. I think that PMO is an amazing integration point. And insofar as that goes, it actually can be very helpful to be a centralized little model. There are so many different kinds of PMOs. The PMO practice guide lists 20 different kinds. You start with the lower levels, it's delivery PMO, where you're really oriented around how are you doing the projects. But it can scale all the way up to enterprise PMO, which is organization wide, which is about that strategic alignment of portfolios toward the delivery and satisfaction of organizational strategic initiatives. And because of that, I think that it's the integrated role that a PMO plays makes it the valuable thing when it comes to realizing the benefits of these projects on a broader organization wide. It's shifting, but it's not shifting the structure. It's shifting the priorities within the structure. And I think with the advent of new technologies and automations, that is pushing the ball forward in that direction in a very decisive way right now.
So when we look at a higher education campus, you talk about organizations and their portfolios. And when I look at a higher education campus, I'm seeing you have admissions, you have the registrars, you have sometimes housing and sports, you certainly have student life and counseling and advising. And all of these are going to be their own siloed operations, right? They have their own specific value they need to provide. But underlying them all is going to be IT, information technology, whether it's the systems that you log into and the actual login mechanism itself, or if it's going to be a website or a third-party service provider that you need to log into. All of these are going to be changing. Every organization is going to have projects, regardless of if they have a dedicated project manager or a formalized PMO around them, or to build and sustain themselves within them. But you talk about the intersection of these places. Where do you see some advantages being found when IT connects with admissions and connects with student life and connects with advising? Do you see any potential ways for the PMO to be the hub there to help the campus move forward?
Across the board, yes. However, we also need to include academic, departments in that as well, right? Like it's not just like the support staff and the housing and all those are all vital as well. But across the board, I mean, the academic disciplines are themselves very siloed a lot of the time. And what is really fascinating to me is the concept of institutional learning, right? Organizational learning that comes off of lessons learned from initiatives that you've done in the past. And to successfully navigate the waters for a new project, you should be able to learn from other projects that have already existed and completed. And sometimes they went well and sometimes they went less well. Because of that, there's a very big push to share information across these silos, sideways, not just up and down. And that's where I think the introduction of new technologies, those IT tools that are there, can help facilitate that shift from one side to the other. Something that I am finding in my PhD program, which I'm going through right now, is that there are sometimes very surprising connections that can be made within academic, scholarly pursuit and inquiry from other departments that normally might not speak to one another. And it's that kind of thing that when you're introducing tools like AI tools, that you have the opportunity to transcend the traditional top-down boundaries, right? This creates a fluid sort of pool and a mechanism to dip into that pool of knowledge and serve it up in an intelligent way without having to wade through the literature and the documentation and all of those things from one side to the other. But I also think functionally, right? with, all the different processes that the organization goes through, all the different services that the university has to offer. It's how do you standardize enough that you can measure the good news from the bad news, right? Project the good news from the bad news, so you can take corrective action ahead of time or preventive action. And then how do you learn from the past and get the good practices that were discovered in one area applied to other areas? And that's something that is missing in siloed organizations where the side, you don't speak side to side, you only speak up and down.
Mm-hmm. And painting with broad strokes here, higher education has been historically a very siloed operation. So we can see here how a disciplined project management approach can help break down those silos and share those lessons learned across departments. I was recently part of a retrospective on a major SIS implementation for a school here in the Intermountain West. And at the very start of the project, someone had raised their hand and said, there's a risk with this approach. The risk was discussed, it was accepted, and then 18 months later, 20 months later, in the retrospective, they pointed out, hey, we had to learn this lesson as part of this project. And that poor project manager was just beating her head up against the wall because she said, we knew this at the start. That didn't need to be a lesson learned. But when we have good retrospectives, when we have good project management discipline, we can share those lessons learned and help us achieve a better sense of execution. Because in the end, IT, any system, any project, it's meant to deliver a business value. And so how do we focus in on that? Now, in project management, the name of the game is 4 things: scope, schedule, cost, and quality. From where you sit, John, where do you see AI fitting in here? And which of those 4 things do you think AI is going to be changing the most first?
Ah, man. So what is AI changing in those specific 4? Honestly, I mean, it's going to overturn the apple. It's already overturning the apple cart in all 4. From a scope standpoint, this is an area where it facilitates transparency, or can facilitate transparency, right? And in terms of quality, which is very closely tied to scope, I think that it allows deeper technical documentation to be synthesized and communicated out. So you don't have to just rely on the tenuous bridge of communication between people who do technical things and the people who do business things, because they do not speak the same language. And often project managers find themselves in the unenviable position of being the translator. The schedule and cost, I mean, that's a pretty straightforward, I think, application where the ability to project on both sides, right? The ability to report on those projections on both sides, translating from ETC to a new EAC, the warning flags that can go up. There are tools that I've had a look at that are still in development from a couple different groups that are really going to revolutionize how we manage risk on those fronts, right? That there are things that they're developing almost like a smoke detector for project work, that it will analyze what's going on in your project and proactively raise red flags in areas, because AI, more than anything else, is a tremendous pattern recognizer. And insofar as its pattern recognition, when it is trained appropriately on project work, it can be superpowered when it comes to recognizing those patterns before they become a major problem. So I think both, cost and schedule, those are closely tied together. Any of those numerical values, AI is going to make those things more efficient if we train right and we listen.
So we talked about those 4 fundamentals: scope, schedule, cost, and quality. Those are the 4 things that project management is expected to deliver. But easily, in my experience, and you can tell me if your experience is similar, what a project manager does is about 90% communication, making sure that the right people know the right thing at the right time. And I saw just this week, one of my colleagues, he had built this, and he's not a technical person. Let me be clear about that. He is not a technical person. He doesn't write code. He did that once, and he had to repent of it. It was not his skill set. But what he was able to do was, with some very basic access into a Chat GPT or Microsoft Copilot or similar, he was able to create a little bot. And within that bot, he was able to upload links to the documentation that the developers and the technical team, what they've created. And from there, he was able to then upload business rules on what they had programmed against. He was actually able to get their entire backlog of executed and completed bugs, user stories, tasks, features, and just upload those as a massive spreadsheet into this bot. And it was pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward stuff. But from there, in about a half of a day, he was able to create a bot that could answer questions to any technical level. He was able to create a bot that would be able to help a business person, equally a developer and or an analyst, to troubleshoot issues as they came up in real time. And it was a fascinating use case to see what we could do with a little bit of AI and this documented knowledge. And then the next step he showed was that I could then use this, and with the latest changes, let's create new documentation. And so then developers can then use their masterful human brains to create the logic that they need, compare it against AI. The project managers now can lead the way they need to lead. And then our business partners and stakeholders can get the information they need when they need it straight through this bot. And we still stay in sync, stay in contact, but now we're spending less time drafting and more time communicating and leading and connecting and designing the roadmap and troubleshooting real issues and taking leaps forward. So that was a fascinating skill set that he developed in a week. Like, it really didn't take him long just to understand the basic components of what this could do, and then move forward. And I look at what that could do at a PMO standpoint. Embedding AI at the core of how a PMO operates and how a modern campus-focused project manager could operate today. If you were going to stand up a PMO today, John, what does being AI ready look like in, say, the first 6 months to 12 months?
Yeah, part of it is going to be that knowledge base that you're talking about, right? Part of it's going to be, hey, look, we're going to base it on past performance inside our organization, inside our context, inside our experience. And then from there, grow it out functionally. I think to be AI ready, you have to have a plan. And that plan needs to have guardrails, not just around compliance, which is a big deal, right? And privacy and proprietary information and all of those great things. But you also have to build out a plan for its use cases within your organization. Something that is often missing or not done as well or as thoroughly as it should be is building business case for your projects. I edited a book last year called Executing Excellence, and he referenced the Canadian government did a study on why do projects fail? Because we know how to do projects, and projects still continue to fail. Why is that? And they found that most of the stakeholders they interviewed on these projects said it would have been useful if we had done a business case. So they had no business case. They had no ROI. They had no success metrics. They just started throwing money around and doing things. And this is where AI can really supercharge your PMO, your project work, your organization, is not just in that past performance, but the projection forward and the estimate of the ROI that you're going to get and those significant risks to the benefits that might exist there. And I know a person who is like VP for PMO at a lot of different organizations, has just a huge amount of knowledge. He used AI to start analyzing business cases at the PMO level and discovered that there were planned projects that were actually a net loss for the organization. And he saved the organization thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in opportunity cost by canceling these projects ahead of time or significantly revising these projects ahead of time so that they could be profitable to the organization. And even if you're not a for-profit organization or a university like that, you still want to be in the black when it comes to your project expenditure at the end of the day. And that is a big deal. So I think that you have to have a plan for how, right? Plan means how. Plan means, I tell that to my students all the time when we're doing trainings. I'm like, plan means how. You have a scope management plan. That's how you're managing scope. And you need to have an AI management plan as well.
Yeah, especially for those campus experts who are responsible for technology being involved, either at the functional level, at the support level, within academics or within IT or anywhere. You have experts who are coming in and they know that there's a problem and they want to solve it. And it's easy to look at the market or look even internally and see, what could we build? What could we do? And they often skip that step, John. We see them skipping that step where they need to clearly define the problem that needs to be solved. And equally important, what we're not trying to solve in this moment. I've watched lots of teams and lots of companies bring in AI because they were told, make this AI. And it's kind of like a couple of years ago when it was make everything agile, or years before that, make everything Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Where the technology was there, the plans were there, the ideas were there, but okay, how do we actually make it fit into this situation? And I've seen lots of teams burn lots of hours in trying to just make something AI, when really we need to have that solid business case, like you said, where when we understand what the problem is that needs to be solved, then we can look at the tools and resources that are out there and the people and the expertise that's there to start bringing them in to look at the exact problem and then apply AI precisely and specifically that can then accelerate our development, accelerate our growth.
What you're saying is absolutely correct. A solution without a problem is not a solution. That counts for like software solutions, AI solutions. Like, you need to understand why. Okay. And so, like, yeah, it's so critically important to have a how. The how is informed by the why. The bot doesn't give you a why. And a lot of teams, a lot of organizations, they're like, go AI because it's more efficient. It's like, is it though? Is it truly? Have you done the math on that? Have you looked at the things you're trying to realize? Have you looked at, the cost evaluation of that? And then how do you maintain adoption? If you don't have a good, strong why, if you're just mandating a new tool be used for no purpose, you will struggle when it comes to adoption, and you will be paying large subscriptions for a tool that is either not being used or is not being used in the way that's efficient with the resources being spent on it. So a lot of these AI tools, they do credits, right? And people are going to use the credits to every time they put a query in. But if your team is using the AI bot as a Google analog, right, a Google replacement, you're wasting credits. It's not being effective to realize anything new. It's just searching the web for you. So those are all important factors in your decision making if you want this to be adopted. And that's not new. Every new software, every new upgrade, every new feature that comes into a team, and I'm sure you encounter this all the time, right? Working with IT and working with universities and working with large, diverse stakeholder groups that have to start using these products. You don't want to be stuck with no one adopting, because then it becomes a mess. But this has been true as long as we've had software that updates.
Right. So, and I have seen that quite a bit. One of the biggest frustrations that I see in my world is when I have stakeholders that come to me and says, we're going to adopt this tool, and this is how we're going to do it. And I'm left wondering, okay, but why? And usually because there's a legitimate cause for concern, and we have to address this, and that's fine. But they start with saying, this is what we're going to do, and they skip the why. And when we skip the why, we skip the awareness. And if we're not fully aware of the project that needs to happen, or the change that needs to take place, then it's hard to really generate that intellectual and internal desire, which then gets in the way of our knowledgeability and reinforcement. And so how do we do this? How do we make sure that project management has a seat at the table across these departments on a campus to add the value that those departments need from their change leaders, from their project leaders?
Yeah, that can be tricky, in terms of ensuring a seat at the table, maintaining a seat at the table, asking and begging for a seat at the table. These are all, they're interpersonal, they're organizational, they're structural. These are wicked problems, right? And so
Wicked problems.
Yeah. So
tell me more.
So a challenging, complex problem with many different factors to it, as opposed to like a more standard problem. Like algebra is made up of standard problems. Chess is made up of wicked problems. So like the nuts and bolts of how do I calculate ETC? That's not a wicked problem. How do we combat homelessness? That's a wicked problem. So how do you implement AI? That's a pretty straightforward problem, can be. How do you get a PMO to have a seat at the table? That's a wicked problem. That has so many different factors that overlay into it. However, that doesn't mean that it's impossible to solve. What it means is that you have to have organization understanding the value of the PMO. And prior to that, there has to be a distinct PMO mandate. The organization needs to want a PMO and to understand what it means to have a PMO. And again, how do you want to have a PMO? That's informed by the why as well, right? PMO is an organizational type technology. It's not a tool type technology, but PMO is an innovation that goes into your organization, and you have to have a why, you have to have a how, and you have to have a what. And I said earlier, there's like 20 different PMO types that are just outlined by PMI itself. There are many PMO types, really, as there are organizations, because they're so unique and special. And you need to know, what does it mean to have one? And I can't tell you the number of organizations I work with where they have one, but it doesn't do anything. Or they have one and it doesn't do anything valuable. Or they don't have one, or they have one that I call vestigial PMO, right? Like it's just kind of this weird title that gets thrown around from person to person, and it's not effective to do anything appreciable. And so these are all symptoms of the fact that the thought and the attention, the focus has not gone into the setup of the PMO. And once that's done, once there's clarity, once there's value understanding, right? Once we know what the goalposts are for the PMO, now that should include a plan for how the PMO is at the table. And without that, you'll never get that.
Yeah. When you talk about organizations that have a PMO, these different types of PMO, their effectiveness, their own maturity, the organization itself has to have a certain type of maturity in order for a PMO to be effective. So there's a little bit of give and take, right? A little bit of chicken and egg, but at the same time, intention, right? Design, purpose. There's a great quote from that Roman philosopher Seneca, who said, "Nobody was ever wise by accident." And so when we look at where we sit, you and I, and then our listeners as they sit respectively in their organizations, you and I have talked offline about M-shaped organizations and P-shaped organizations, where M-shapes are usually traditional, they're siloed, whereas P-shaped or P-form organizations are usually project-oriented, and their departments are a bit more fluid. Talk to us about the distinction there, and help us think about the governance and the innovation and the talent that makes these succeed.
Sure. Yeah, M-form organization is very traditional, right? Top-down approach, siloed out, You have different divisions, different departments. You have a marketing function here. You have a sales function here. You have an operations function here. And they don't really have to collaborate with one another to get their jobs done. This is really good for what project managers would call operations, right? Where you're selling a thing, it's not changing all the time. There's like a stability around the service offerings that marketing can do their job fairly independently. Sales can do their job fairly independently. But P-form organizations are project-based organizations, right? And so instead of like offering a SaaS model or something, they are building something new. And then once it's delivered, building something else new and unique. So this is projects, not operations now. And when you have a P-form organization, that's where the communication left and right, not just up and down, has such a huge impact. Because what you have in a P-form organization is this very ad hoc system. New things, new projects exist, and then they close and they don't exist anymore. New knowledge is created, and then that new knowledge goes away unless it's captured in some way. Right? Teams start doing one thing, and then a year later, they could be doing something wholly different. And so there are challenges with P-form that help us, if we get clear about what these challenges are, put things in place like governance structures that help foster innovation, that help develop talent across different functions, and can help assign resources from place to place as these different ad hoc endeavors open and close. And that's a PMO, right? The PMO allows you to functionally structure integration across all of this variety at the bottom level. But it also needs to operate in a way that transcends a lot of the boundaries that an M-form organization would have, those traditional organizations would have. So it's just a really interesting twist that is kind of underappreciated in a lot of thought around the way corporate structure and corporate life goes in the world today.
Yeah. So if I'm sitting on a camp in higher education, campuses are by and large, again, painting with broad strokes, are going to be M-form shaped, right? So the admissions team and the marketing team and the IT and the mathematics, the architecture departments, right? They're each going to be operating within their own silos, but there's still these lessons that can be learned across them. So if I'm sitting in one of these departments and I'm sensing that there are lessons to be learned, or perhaps also lessons that I've learned that can be shared, what are some steps that I could take from a grassroots perspective to start sharing these lessons learned and inviting in more of the P-form behaviors so that we can share these lessons learned and accelerate the development and growth of my campus?
Yeah, part of it is those conversations that you need to start having, right? That's the simplest, most straightforward, easiest thing. But it's also difficult because you have to know what to say and who needs to hear it. And so something that I recommend is to do an influential stakeholder map of some kind, right? Where you can, if you look in your department, for example, you start there, right? In your department, who's the most influential person? Who's the person that most people trust? It's not usually the manager. It's someone else, right? And so what you should do is start gauging like trust and mapping that from people. This person trusts that person the most, that person the most, that is the most trustworthy, most reliable, right? Just go to them. Who's your most reliable colleague? Oh, it's this person. Eventually someone's going to rise to the top there. And that map, you can start doing that in a broader organization-wide level to start understanding who are the true movers and shakers in your organization, right? Who really pushes the ball forward? These are the people that you need to have on your side when it comes to change management. And those are people who are key stakeholders on the implementation side for new tools. And they're also the people that you need as advocates for something new you've learned to be adopted, right? And so these are adoption stakeholders, in my opinion. And I would start there. It's all about the people. And then from there, like you can start working, like a memo is worthless, right? An email probably not getting read. A giant stakeholder meeting, 90% of the people will go to sleep. It's just a matter of having information exchanged on the bottom, most grassroots level, but with the right people.
When we talk about changes that happen at an organization, we often talk about new systems being implemented or a merger and acquisition or something grandiose like that. But really, companies don't change. Campuses don't change. It's people that change. It's behaviors that change. And systems and environmental factors, yes, influence those things. But like you said earlier, we have brought in systems before that failed because behaviors didn't change, for better, for worse, for good and for bad. Behaviors didn't change. And so when we look at, as you were saying, trust, who do you trust? And if I were to dissect trust, what does that look like? I am looking at somebody who has integrity, that does what they say they're going to do, that has good intent. They feel like their interests are aligned with mine and with the organization's, that have the capability that they can do what they say they're going to do, and they have a track record of results. They get done what they say they're going to get done when they're going to get it done. And so when we look at those individuals and we see they can get things done, not because they're a manager or they're a VP or supervisor, what have you, but because they've garnered that success, they've garnered that trust, and they have those habits that really build into that success. Campuses are usually really good when it comes to integrity and intent, right? Higher education does the work of angels. We don't often compete with each other, campus across campus. Our competition are the demons of ignorance and poverty and hunger, and all of us are brothers and sisters in arms against those wicked problems. As we look ahead, and if I want to build at least maybe not a project management discipline, but perhaps some project management behaviors that can help lay the foundation for good cross-department collaboration, what are some mindset shifts that a leader could start practicing this week to prepare themselves, their team, for responsible use of AI as we generate this new behavior?
Yeah. I'd say mindset wise, the main thing is to remember AI is a system. It's not a person, right? It's a system, it's a tool. And that if you're trying to establish like more rudimentary project functions, don't go to it for answers. Go to the people in your department and start strategizing how to systemize the way you do your work. Then AI is going to be a good fit for how you're doing your work. You're going to know what to ask it and how to ask it. The other thing is find some resources out there on, what does it look like to implement AI on a project-oriented organization? PMI has a couple of like micro trainings that I think are free to members. They have a cost, but they're free to if you're a member at PMI, which I do recommend. Membership is really powerful at PMI. But they're fairly cheap micro courses, and they're really useful, right? For now. And they're always gonna have to follow up and try to catch up to the zeitgeist. And I would say, like, what's your system gonna be for it? Because that's really the heart of project management is, do you have a system? Do you have a bank of prompts or persona identification, right? Can you say, here's a prompt, literally copy and paste to get this kind of persona within your large language model, which will change what you get back out of it, to reflect those things back. Are there certain key techniques that you have? That's all doable for little cost right now. But you need to understand your system and how it factors into your system. Otherwise, you're going to end up using the tool radically inefficiently.
Exactly. Solving for that problem. If there were four things I would add and maybe harmonize with you here, four things in an AI embedded culture whether if it's on campus, whether it's in your family, whether it's in any part of your professional career. These are 4 things that every professional today that involves or interacts with IT systems can look forward to. Number 1 is be insatiably curious. Ask questions. Ask the right questions. Learn how to ask great questions to really dig in and understand what the problem is that we need to solve. And as you say, these problems are going to change. Second is to be adaptable. I heard a wise man recently say that the AI that you're working with today will be the worst you've ever used, because give it 15 minutes and it'll change. It'll update. It'll get better. Third is to develop an independent subject matter expertise outside of what AI tells you. We've all seen hallucinations, and some people say hallucinations aren't a bug, they're a feature, right? They're just trying to guess things out the way all of us do. And then fourth, as you have said, think in systems, not just in a solution or in a step, but think in systems. And if we can think in those systems of what the input is, what the stock of information is, what that process looks like, and what the output is going to be. When we think in these systems, then we can see specifically where AI is going to accelerate us to a positive solution, or where the application of AI might accelerate us to a failure. Because these systems, these processes have to be well thought out and well reasoned. Yes, use AI to help you, but use your own human logic and experience to refine the output, to make sure that it gives you the outcome that you expect and need for the situation at hand. Getting this, not just the prompt engineering right, but the contextual engineering right, to give it those documentations, those libraries, those bank of prompts, so that we can get out of it what we really need to succeed.
I think the main thing I'm putting in my pocket, if I'm trying to put AI in place in my organization, is there is no such thing as a silver bullet. There's never been any such thing as that just doesn't exist. There's no one thing that's the panacea for all that ails you. It's going to be it's an uphill battle. This is all an uphill battle. AI represents a tremendous challenge for organizational life, especially at universities. Right? It's a tremendous challenge. This is challenging our thinking. It's challenging how learning is facilitated, not just organizationally and functionally, but in the classroom. How do you answer the existential questions of that? Goes hand in hand with how do you make the thing actually work for you? Those are 4 really important steps in the mindset. And you have to spend time thinking before jumping. And I see this around all the time. Hey, fail fast and then self-correct. Fail fast, fail fast. We love fail fast in the project world. I don't love fail fast. Fail well. Have a system and tools and philosophy and thoughts and ideas in place to learn from the mistakes. Anybody can fail fast. I can drive a bus off a cliff really fast. And AI has fueled speed more than anything else. But as you point out with the hallucinations, sometimes you go really, really fast into a brick wall. And I don't want, you shouldn't want that. And if you can avoid that, then you should, right? And that means like having a human in the loop, having that subject matter expertise you're talking about, and pumping the brakes. A lot of times the PMO has a lot of critique leveled at it, like, oh, this just slows us down. Well, yeah. A car doesn't have just a gas pedal, my friend. It has a brake too, because that helps save lives.
That's right. I saw one particular campus that I support make a multi-million-dollar purchase of a software without running it through the PMO's evaluation process. And
how did that work out for him? Maybe less than great.
The cost had to be paid sooner or later, and where we didn't pay for it on due diligence, we paid for it in implementation.
Yeah,
and that was
you've always got to pay for your education. Sometimes it's painful payment that you're making, but hopefully you learn your lesson from it.
And the lessons will continue until they are learned. Right. So, John, as we wrap up here, thank you again so much. As a final thought, final remark, what's something that you are personally watching or looking forward to, or even experimenting with AI that excites you about the future of project management?
I think that right now it's a matter of development in the areas of strategic communication, development, and ideation. I know that the next big wave is agentic AI. Frankly, I think that from where I'm at, I feel like that's less relevant to some of the things that I'm fascinated with right now about the model. I think that we still haven't figured out LLM without getting into agentic, but things are such a breakneck pace right now. What I think is most valuable for it is using it to spot organizational learning and point that up, right? But also, I think that risk projection type thing is going to catapult efficiency and caution, really, into the way that we do our business, right? Produce our projects and execute. I'm far more interested in using AI for the brake system than for the gas pedal,
Interesting.
because now you have data that can project where problems might be, and that lets you put the brakes on something. And I think that's way more useful than just making mistakes faster and faster and faster and faster. And this just keeps getting faster. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not good decision making. Good decisions are not made super fast usually. Usually good decisions are made with a little bit of thought. And this gives us the lever to do that. So yeah, I think that I am most excited about slow AI. AI that slows you down with its massive body of knowledge and data that it can give you so you can make good decisions. And that's the heart of it. That's the heart of it. People are not going away. No matter how much AI you develop, people are not going away because the AI does not choose. Humans choose. Well, if humans choose, they better make a good decision. And AI offers us an opportunity to do that.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.